Yeah. You got a few days left.
They're free! I'm free, yes, to do many other things. Praise God for so many people being here. If you would pray with me, please. Lord God, we thank you for people who have come tonight who represent those who are fighting for the freedom of religion, the freedom to protect our freedoms, and all of the other things that the Constitution that you provided to our founding fathers brings us today. We ask, Lord, that you help us, you guide us, you provide a light to our path, you help us to be exactly what you need us to be, to give a conscience to those who are misbehaving, destroying our freedoms, seeking a world where men are in control instead of you, Lord. We ask that you give us wisdom and discernment in the actions that we need to do to bring back our country to you. We ask all of these things in the wonderful, blessed name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing. Also, let's hear 643. Well, it is in the America.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ayes will be this item.
Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag.
Flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Please be seated. This is our agenda for the season. That's all you need to look at there. Yeah. One of the things we promised you is that we give you a gift. So yesterday, Constable Ted Heath, who is Precinct 5, that is the second largest precinct, constable precinct, in the United States. He's got over 400 deputies, he's got over 50 support personnel. And Ted Heath has spoken to the Conservative Leaders Forum here several times. Many of you know him. He is the most knowledgeable individual I know from the standpoint of law enforcement in Harris County. And he did an outstanding job of going over what he considered the problems to be in Harris County and the solutions that would be available for you. So the link is right there. We are making a recording of this session, and it works out all right. We'll send you the recording, and you'll be able to see everything that Ted Heath shared with us. We're going to do a little bit of technical shifting here, so Bill is hooked up to the HDMI port, and I'm gone. Yeah. You had a chance to look at my introduction of Bill, but he has been the guiding force behind the Training and Development Committee for the Harris County Republican Party for some time, and he developed that training manual. How many of you have used the training manual? I've got a number of hands out here. Okay. Fantastic work there. He's also a member of the Ballot Security Committee, and the Ballot Security Committee and the Training Committee are working together to build that 10,000 volunteers that we need to make sure that these elections all go right. So, Bill, take it away.
Yeah, let me just update a couple things that I've got mine on over here. So I say the topic is winning in November. I thought it was the ask was winning again. So, but I think it still applies. But it might be I definitely have a little bit different content if it was thinking about November. Again, it will apply. I'm no longer on training development. I've been shifted. I dropped that. I'm really trying to be 100% on ballot security, right? Because I think that winning about November is about trying to do the best to protect our votes. So that's one thing I'm working on, given what time we have left. And 10,000, that was a number that I supported and tried to put a plan together a year ago. And didn't get support for that, so I'm doing what I can, but that brigade, about 10,000 people, it may happen, but I support it, but I'm not actively engaged in that effort. So you may have seen other emails that came out recently. The effort is really on doing some level of work of cleaning up our roles. I'm glad to answer questions on that if folks have it, but let's get into the agenda that I thought Gail asked me to talk to. So winning again, I got a couple examples. So I'll talk about Cypress specifically, but we just ran 3 new candidates in ESD 9 election, and we won all 3, right? And it's just great. It's interesting if you do the blood equity and the work required to win these elections, it's a different feeling, right, when you win and that board member is now the majority, right? Because now they're choosing who's the president of that board and vice president, that sort of thing. So the Cypher election we won. Go ahead, Dave. What's up?
You also brought down 12 people, and Kendall Baker won by 80 votes and knocked out the socialist head.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
So those 12 people knocked on 1,000 doors that weekend. See, that's 4 races.
So, and bring that up, because what's really, I think, key of this whole thing, guys, is, I mean, how long did it take that Harris County turned red? Right? I mean, was that, sorry, Mark. It didn't turn blue. I'm sorry.
That's why I look at you like
that. How long will it take to turn red? Or again?
Oh.
Right? And so the part of that dialogue, it didn't happen overnight, and it's our own fault in many cases, right? We have not had chairs placed. The chairs that we had placed aren't active. We still have plenty. Probably half the chairs aren't active. Right, so we've got to do some things to kind of change that. So you're going to see in here, there's a common theme, and I think it's common sense, but it boils down to hard work. And if it's not us, if we're not doing that, I'm not sure who's going to do it. Okay, so a lot of folks will come to meetings, they go to meetings for meetings. It's not about, it's about action. And it's, in my opinion, it's about serving your community. You know, serving God and serving your community. If you have a servant's heart, you can succeed as a precinct chair, and I think that longer term turns this county red. But you can't do this because you want meetings. You can't do this because you're looking for more power. You got to do this because you care, right? So that's the common theme you'll see through here. So Cypher, I'll give you a little bit of background. Each of these elections is different, right? And I'll summarize it towards the end. And I got enough content just on this race alone. I'll probably spend the whole day to talk about the strategy, the execution, things we went. I'm just trying to give you guys a little bit of a sliver here. Plurality of the election, so there's no primary, there's no runoff. Because it's not a primary, you don't get, it's hard to get the community engaged to help maybe choose the best candidate. So what we try to do is precinct chairs facilitate that conversation, and what happened is we pissed off a lot of the community, because they said, why do precinct chairs get to choose the candidates? Right? Well, I don't choose how this election is run. But the reason we try to choose the candidates is because what happens traditionally, party hasn't weighed in, people don't know who the R's and the D's are in the election. Right? And so people just generally don't know who to vote for. And what happens, you get too many Republicans running against one Democrat, we eat our own, we lose. And we almost did in this case. You're going to see that example. So what we tried to do, without a defined process, the party does not have a process as best I understand it, but we try to get chairs to coalesce, do some forums, meet the candidates, and do our best to choose, if we could, and we may not align, but if we could get a majority of the precinct chairs that live in that district to support a candidate, then we're going to fight for an endorsement. And that's what we did. Nonpartisan race, yeah. Is any race nonpartisan anymore? It's a traditional turnout, so you got to do your research. That's the lesson learned here. Each of these elections, you got to go back to, I say, 3 or 4 different elections. Make sure you understand, what were the vote counts, the candidates, the mix, how many candidates for each slot. Is it an at-large district or not? So there's a lot. All these elections are slightly different. So you got to make sure you do your research and understand. So over here you see the 2 circles, the blue circles. Those are 2 Democrats on that whole panel. What's interesting, this is vote by voting record, right? But I assure you, the yellow rectangle there, those were the 3 on the last ballot. Those other 2 have blood red Republican voting records. But if you go to the board meetings, who in here has gone to the Cypher board meeting? I know Lexi, Mac, Russell. Are these guys, did they act in those board meetings, or did they act like Republicans?
No, they all
in terms of respecting the community, making decisions? No. And you're not going to know that if you don't go. So I was one of those guys, never went to school board meeting. I always wanted to, would have loved to, but if you don't go to these board meetings, you're not knowing what's going on. So anyway, 16, 20-year incumbents. I won't go through all this stuff, but gives you a background. We leveraged this issue. I won't get to all the details, but CRT and SciFair was definitely an anchoring message that we could use to help rally the community. So our plan, and this is probably really important to understand, and this certainly applies to November as well, right? So that red outline there, that polygon, that's SciFair district, okay?
Will you be sharing these slides with us?
Yeah, glad to, yes. And I'd be glad to talk to anyone more detail about any of this stuff. But so that red outline is the boundaries. So my first task was, who are all the precinct chairs in there? Which precinct chairs matter, right? Which one even participate? And I will tell you, probably 50% at least, the precinct chairs in here they wouldn't even reply back to an email. They didn't come to the forums. So I had to waste, me and other volunteers wasted time and energy following up with these chairs to see where they stood. Right? We send them the videos, recorded the videos of the forum. Did you got feedback? Who do you support? All that kind of stuff. But more importantly, and I got a slightly different version of this, Matt, is we lay on what's called RSI. Anyone here know what RSI means? Strength, right. It's basically, I took the last general election, take Trump votes divided by total votes in a precinct or a district. And what we do, I did it for every one of these precincts. So I knew going into this election, where are the strongest Republican precincts? Right, because that whole district, right, 325,000 voters, 4.4% voted in the last election, right? So we knew we could win this election. That's about 20,000 votes. What's that?
The last school board election.
The previous one before the one we just won. Okay, so this would have been 2019. Right, about 21,000 voters show up in that election. So, and if I got my numbers right, could be off a little bit.
RSI again?
Republican strength.
Oh.
It's basically not total registered voters. The denominator is total people that voted in the last election. So R's, D's, everybody, I's, everybody. But the numerator is those that voted Republican top of the ticket. Right? So the higher that ratio, closer to 1, 100% of people voted for Trump. That's a strong Republican precinct, or America First precinct anyway. Right? So our strategy was we got to turn out the R's. But we can't get enough of these precinct chairs to participate, right? So we got to focus with limited resources on where are all our votes. Those turn out to be this map started out all the hard Republican, really strong ones with red, right? The ones we actually did heavy canvassing, block walking in, are now dark green. The ones we did light canvassing in you can see them here, and then a couple of precincts we didn't get to, or the precinct chair may have gotten just to get feedback. But that's my point. Even in a Democrat, this is more heavy Democrat, if you know where the R's are, because there's such low turnout, you can win these elections. That's the strategy. But to win this election, what we need is precinct chairs in areas that don't have a lot of Republican voters. Because I spend an hour, right, and I get 3 doors out of 10 on the street. Every 10th street, I get 30% are R's. I go up where I live, and some of these up here, I'm in 7 to 8 out of the doors are R's. I get a lot more return on my limited investment. So you need to know where you are in that election cycle. And I'm going to cover that again too, because I think this also applies outside the election where we are right now, as well as going into the election. So to win these elections, smaller ones, know where your R's are, let them know who on that ticket's an R, because these are typically people don't know, so we made that very clear. So I'm going to show you the results and stuff here. I don't know if that last one. So you can actually see the plans of the doors, voters we touched, all that kind of stuff. You can see some of the pictures here. But this is what I think is most important. Right? So what I told you in the last election, this was 4.4 average turnout in that whole district. This time around, it was somewhere between 18 and 8%. I can't remember total turnout, closer to 8%. But precincts that we targeted, look at the turnout. 4%, an average was 18%, high 27% turnout.
Wow.
Right? And then those that we didn't target, we still got more turnout. But that's my point. And that's how you can win these elections. You got to just know where to focus and understand the precinct, your data, the district. Here's another thing on the results, right? So 3 positions, these are at large in the district, but they run against each other. Other elections, they're all run for the same race. The top 3 voter getters win. This is one as I was most concerned of. Look at the blowout here, right? 49%, 47%. Here, still a pretty good blowout. Ogletree was our real concern. If we lost this race, he was the one that was sending out all the racial texts. I mean, you guys saw that stuff. If he'd have won this, he'd be the president of the board right now. Because we got 3 people on there, there's 7 total. We'd be in the minority. He clearly would have been the president. And he's the one that drafted, initiated the whole equity study. If you guys are familiar with what's gone on in the site there. And that's not gone quiet yet. It's still going to be there. So anyway, it gives you an idea of the turnout. So what we're trying to do is avoid this. Just look at, if I had combined Blasingame and Spratt, because that's where we divided the vote. We had a little bit of division with Grace and Todd, and here, these two, this gentleman there, actually was a Democrat. So we lost, you can see some votes here, but really this is the one we were most concerned about. And we tried to avoid that. And the way we did that is we tried to get the candidates together and allow the chairs, we did a forum, we asked them questions, we allowed the chairs to ask questions. And based on that feedback, the chairs provided them feedback. So as a candidate, I said, geez, I got 25 precinct chairs at this meeting and only 2 are supporting me. Maybe it's not my time to run, right? Maybe in 2 more years, there's 4 seats available. Maybe I should consider that. Egos got in the way. Someone, thought they were better than the other candidate, whatever. So we almost lost that. But obviously you can see the point. But in doing this process, with the most valuable, you got to keep me honest on time. Is it's the relationships we developed with my neighbor and precinct chairs, my neighbors, my friends that came out, like Diana. That's really what carries over. And I think that carries over to the next election, right? So you're starting building relations, you're serving the community, and you're building those relationships that matter on the next one, okay? So this is a key thing. Again, it's a back down to service. Anyone see the recordings? I've done a series of small 5 to 8 minute recordings that sort of builds up on all this. It starts at a higher level about relationship building, precinct segmentation, strategies to divide up your precinct and find out ways that every precinct is going to be different. So what's the best way to cover your precinct? Then it gets down into the data around OHPS. How do you use that data effectively, right, to, again, over time, make a difference in your precinct? So I'm not going to go through all this. You'll get the slides, right? But the key point here is trying to think of a way is how am I serving my community? How do I provide them information? Most of these people don't. In the ESD9 election, most of the doors we knocked on, they didn't know about what is the ESD9 election. Not only that, but you've got the constitutional propositions, and they're different voting locations, right? And for the propositions, you could vote. It's countywide voting, right? Or you could do close to home. Didn't matter. ESD9, no. You have one location for early voting, and you have one location on election day. There are multiple locations, but based on your precinct, you could only go to one. So it was like you were dizzy trying to figure out, if you could, as a citizen, where to vote. And of course, they do that intentionally, right, to increase the vote, increase the turnout in favor of the incumbent, people that get served by the district. And think through this too, right? So you knock on a door. I knock on this gentleman's door. He's a Republican. If I say I'm a Republican chair, we already have something in common, right? We might be able to start a conversation. Not every door is going to be that way. Some Republicans don't want to talk to the precinct chair either, right? But if I knock on the Democrat door, they're probably not going to be as engaging, right? So you got to start to find the common interests, and you have different strategies when you're going to approach a door that you have knowledge on that's a Republican door versus an independent door versus a Democrat door. And you need to understand that because that strategy, each of those strategies is short, medium, and long-term differences, okay? And you're going to see how that unfolds. But the point is, this is where we want to get to. We want to get down to what are the issues that matter to the people in my community, and how do I serve them? How do I serve them with information on these issues? How do I put them in touch with like-minded people on those issues? If you can do that longer term, you're going to get more support. You're going to build trust with your neighbors and actually get them pulled in, hopefully, in the political process. I'm not going to cover too much of this. When I did the original recordings on OHPS, this is just about data. Right? I'm a big data person, really, to understand your precinct. I'm not a big data person, but I like data, I appreciate it, to understand and help me develop a strategy. And so I really encourage you guys to use this data as best you can to understand your precinct. Now, some of these tools have changed since I did these recordings. Who in here has done block walking? All right, you guys, Campaign Sidekick, Advantage, Others? Okay, so when I did this, it was, well, you say OHPS, but are you doing paper walkbooks? Yeah, and that, so I use this and taught people. I built templates that people can do horizontal profile. You can do paper walkbooks. For the older generation, that's their preference. Right? You talk about Jerry Vanderlyn, that's what she wants. Jerry does not want to figure out Sidekick and deal with the fact she clicks on a click and it takes 60 seconds before it gets to the next, all that kind of stuff. So, Russ has democratized the data. He's made it accessible, right? Which we really never had as a party before. So bless him for doing that. But today, and one of the other issues is if you ever done VanDyk and you recorded and you knocked on this neighbor's door, they're willing to give you their email address. Did you get it back? You did not get it back.
There's no way.
Right, so it's very controlling. So Campaign Sidekick allows you to do that. So now we haven't done a full training rollout. I'm not even sure Cindy has chosen what application to use as a party, but I assure you, you can get the reports every night. You have to work with our district director. It's Taylor Tellez, for those that might know Taylor. You customize your script a little bit, ask a couple of questions. For me, email, phone number. They'll share that with me, then I can now start my communications on a regular basis with them, try to get them to monthly meetings, that sort of thing.
What is the district director? I haven't heard of that.
It's a role within RPT. They assign certain people to certain regions that maybe need more help.
Is that a state? From the state party?
Yes, well in this case, yes. There's some that are national, some I don't know where, I think Taylor is state RPT. He's assigned down here in the southeast. I think it's been split, a new person's coming. I don't have the intro to that person yet.
Bill, is the data sheets, are those still available?
These are, and I think they've been updated. Are you our chair now?
No, but I am. And
All right. So that's a good point, and it's a really good question, right? Because this is it's a break of chain, right? If we rely on our precinct chairs, we've broken the chain. Because how many precincts have volunteers that want to do something, but don't have a chair that's responsive and a chair that's serving the volunteer, that's getting the volunteer engaged in something that can make a difference. Nothing more frustrating. That volunteer is gone after that, right? So we've got to find better ways, again, to democratize this, allow volunteers to get the data that can help make a difference. I don't want to be a precinct chair, Bill, but I would be willing to help. So we can make it available. We've got to do some level of QA because we have been infiltrated.
How do the precinct chairs get it?
Oh, so Russ Long sends this out. Every time he does an update, it's the voter rolls from November. Yeah, they should get an email, and then the email has a link. They go out to OHPS and get this. And it has several different files. It has files like this for people that aren't really IT savvy. You can just print out the PDF, right? It has a full database that you would not want, I call it Excel spreadsheet, but pretty massive. You will not print it out. It'll kill a forest of trees and won't make sense because of all the columns that are in it. But the videos that I put together on that kind of walk people through what's in the data, why it's important, how to use it, how to filter, slice, and dice in more intelligent ways. But it's available. Where I'm going with this whole thing is that this was kind of hard. When we did the ground fire program, right, I had to manually go into the spreadsheet to create these logbooks. We'd sit with 20, 30 people on a weekend and go out and capture data. I'd have a bunch of hard copies. And who had to put that data back into the spreadsheet? I don't have time for all that. I need the precinct chairs local to take ownership of this stuff. So after a couple of those things, I said, guys, I can't do this, right? So I learned from that. I said, look, if someone's going to want ground fire to come to their precinct and help them in their precinct, that precinct chair's got to take ownership for some of this, okay? And that was not happening, and it was a missed opportunity. We hit some really heavy Democrat areas, and the common theme of the door, if someone answered that door, was, where the hell have you been? Right, think through this, right? If you got 2 out of 10 doors, maybe 1 out of 10 doors is a Republican. They're in, everyone here is a Democrat. They don't know where the R's are. But it's our opportunity to serve them and help connect the R's in their community together to start building some foundation. Now, you're not going to do that when you're in the middle of an election. Like that Cypher election. I can either take the limited resources that we have as precinct chairs and I can focus on the R doors and get them to the polls. Right? But if I take that time during that election and go to these precincts that are heavily blue, see what I'm saying? That's not the time to do it. So it's really important. I'm going to get to here in a second of understanding where you are in the election cycle. But here's the long-term strategy I want you guys to think about using this data. Right? So this kind of reflects over time. In the short term, you're going to focus on the R doors. Right? In the midterm, you're going to go after independents. In longer time, you'll figure out what your strategy, if you can, sway any of the Democrats. So again, if this is a street, 6 doors on the street, and OHBS tells you, hey, those 2 doors, the red ones are Republicans. You'll start there. And if you can get their help, I'm not their neighbors. I might live 2 neighborhoods away. I got 6,000 people in my precinct. I don't know everybody. But this guy might know this guy, right? And this guy might know this guy. And this lady might know that lady, right? Our kids may go to school together. They may play soccer together, whatever. So if you can secure support from these folks over the midterm, they can help understand. And they might even say when you talk to them, how many times you block walk and knock on the door and say, oh yeah, Bill, yeah, they're definitely Republican, not Republican. Oh yeah, you just definitely knock on the oh, go to that door, don't want to go there. You know what I'm talking about. That starts to sort of tell you go back to your OHBS data, and you can update your maps. And then you can say, okay, how about this guy? Bill, lost cause. That's George Soros lookalike, whatever. You're not going to look at this guy. But this one says, I don't know. It says, well, they voted in the Democrat primary. That's all we know. Right? That's how we know the color of these doors. We don't know who they voted for. But we know who voted in the Democrat primary, right? We know who voted in the Republican primary. We know who may vote, who's registered, right? But it's not voted in either primary. So that's an independent. And usually 60-70% of the data in the OHPS fall in that yellow category.
Right.
So if you're in a high RSI community, chances are most of those yellow doors are also red. They just don't vote in the primary. Okay? So the idea, again, if you think about that service mentality, you have to have a different strategy to knock on which doors. So again, if you're building a team, you're a new precinct chair, you're going to start with just the R doors, right? And then see from that body, can you secure support, right? And then part of the videos I recorded talk about how they take this and break out your entire precinct. How does segmentation? So what I did, my strategy was 6,000 voters, 100 voters per block captain. So I want 60. I got about 51 block captains. Now they're not all active, that's unfortunate, but it's a full-time job just to keep up to date with 51 block captains, okay? So let's keep going. Turning Harris County, so those concepts I shared, right? How do we turn Harris County red again, right? One thing I said, you've got to know your own precinct, right? If you can't get your own house in order, right, how can you turn this county red again? Okay, so in the profiles, and these profiles, by the way, I think we've discontinued them, but the training development is working with the HRP to find a way to get this electronic, right? So I wouldn't mind sitting down with some folks on some of this, but this is a lot of work. Go ahead.
The next update for OHPS will be right after he gets all the information from the county.
Okay.
Voting.
So what we did is when we first started these profiles, we would do the analysis on the voting history, and try to provide guidance, a 6-month plan to that new precinct chair what they can do. And what I found is that each person on the training development team was coming up with a different strategy. I says, well, that doesn't work. All right. So what I did is, look, let's some sort of model, and I just took the strength, right? So very Democrat, very Republican. I just used RSI, the same RSI thing I told you about before, and then turnout. So what ideally we'd all like to be in quadrant 1, right? We got a really hard Republican and a high turnout, right? So if you're in quadrant 1, what's your strategy? Anyone? So no, if you're in quadrant 1, you're already ahead. So average turnout in the counties, average turnout in the county is 62%. So if you're north of that green line, you're already beating the county, right? So, but we want to try, and I think our voter rolls are so bad, we're never going to be 100%. My guess is 90% is probably the best you're going to get, because I think that those voter rolls are so bad. So my point is, if you start getting up in this range in here, who's that? Yes, exactly it. You see what I'm saying? So if you're in quadrant 1, what you want to do is make sure you know your neighbors and find out who's not in that quadrant. Spend your time. So when I did this, what I do? I went and knocked on George Porter's door. Right? He's a neighboring precinct. We didn't have precinct chair there. I knocked on 806. 405 replaced the precinct chair. Because I could make because this is me. I'm right here. Okay? I'm at a very large precinct and I'm very hard to turn out. The work that I spend in my precinct and getting more turnout is not going to make a hill of beans in the county race. Right? It's not going to help. I've got to get other precincts up in here if I can. So in this case, I went around, found my neighboring precinct chairs, and tried to recruit others. Okay? Now, if I'm down here, what do I want to do? I'm in 2, what do I do? What's your strategy? Huh?
Look at my own turnout.
Exactly. And not necessarily on your own, but certainly, right? Because you might need help if it's a big precinct and your neighboring precinct chairs are here, or even during the election. Think of the Cy-Fair race, Mark, right? Say your neighboring precincts are here. What should these precinct chairs be doing during the election?
Yeah, trying to weed out where the Republicans are, make sure they show up.
I think they should be over here helping you. That's my point. That's how we won the Cy-Fair race. Folks like Russell, where's Russell? Russell came up and block walked in Cy-Fair, right? And other precinct chairs did too, but they had precincts that were not as dense, didn't have as many Republicans, right? So now we're not in the race. What should I be doing? I should go, where's Russell in here? Russell came up, he wasted his sweat equity, came up and helped us win. Now he's in Cy-Fair, so he had interest in that race, right? But he helped us knock on doors to make sure we win. But now it's a foundational work in a building mode for our precinct. Now what I should do is come down here, right? Or I should be helping Mike May. Mike May's got all kinds of these precincts, or these, right? So now getting him to place precinct chairs might give him a better chance, certainly give him a better chance than he has of beating Rosenthal, who's the worst progressive in the state of Texas, or close to it, 149th or something. All right, so again, the point here is you've got to know your precinct, know your strategy, and you'll see the best practice later is you need to know who your neighboring precinct chairs are, and who's good and who's not. And if they're not good, have a discussion with them. Can they ante up? Can they do more? Because if they can't, you gotta replace them, right? But you don't want to just replace them. You need to build a relationship with them. Maybe that time in their life they just can't. They got something going on. So try to work with them if you can. Some won't call you back. Replace them. If they can't give you the professional decency to call you back, replace them. All right. I mentioned this before. Know where you are. So that example I just gave Mark, right, is know where you are in the cycle. So when I don't have 2021 on, so it would have been up here, 2021. Imagine up here in November, the Cy-Fair election's going on, right? In that instance, you need to get all the precinct chairs in that race, in that district, behind that strategy, and supporting, which may not be doing work in their own precinct, right? So right now, right, we're in here convention time frame. This is building time down to the election down here in November. This is a great time for me spending time in my precinct. Not going to make much of a difference. So what other precincts can I invest my time in to help them build? That's what I should be doing. Okay? So again, knowing where you are in that cycle is really, really important because your strategy in terms of the activities you're going to do with your limited time are going to be different. Lexi.
So as a precinct chair in a very blue precinct, what should I be doing right now?
Well, let's go back. Are you a 4 or a 3? Doesn't matter.
It's at least 80%.
So you should move. I'm kidding. Alexi, do you know your neighboring precinct chairs? Are they engaged? How strong are their precincts? Can they help you?
But I need to walk with them because for protection purposes.
Okay.
My neighborhood.
Yeah, you gotta get help. That's
So
right.
I
So
think
either
we
you start
volunteer
volunteer with a
there.
Nolan, volunteer pool, or I would start with your precinct chairs. You're all closest. You need to build those relationships, develop that ecosystem, and focus on the R's. You need to get more R's in your community engaged. If you can't, go ahead.
So is there some app that we need to be filling out to get the data collected?
The app is to me the least of all of our concern.
Well,
Yes.
how do I get this
Campaign
data?
sidekick.
What exactly do I ask them? Knock on the door and say what?
Campaign sidekick, you just need Taylor
Campaign
Kelly's
sidekick.
contact.
Okay.
It's a download. You follow up afterwards. I can help you with the connection.
Okay, thank
She's
you.
making a good point there.
What's that?
She's making a good point there, because I really don't know how to contact people. If it's a candidate, I can say, this is a great time, I met him. But if there's not a candidate, I mean, how do you contact people? What's your pitch? Because
What's my pitch? Safety, border security, life. I mean, the list. I mean, all kinds of reasons. Especially, right? Those issues are going to change. Not change in terms of your
Price of
values,
gas.
but your approach to those doors. What's that?
Price of gas.
There you go. There you go. Exactly. So the talking point will change based on the door you're touching. But for her right now, these are our doors. Our being Republican. You know, every one of our precincts has got some have very few, okay, some have others. And you actually might be so far gone in your precinct, right? You need to help others. Because you're never going to recover that, not in the current environment, right? Until other things start to change. So you got to just sort of assess yourself here too, Alexi. I mean, do you have any help, any block captains, any, you know, those kinds of questions come to my mind. But you've got to for sure know your neighboring precinct chairs, who's good, who can help, and you know, definitely get the R's on a map and start knocking on those doors, right? Try to get their emails, right? Try to get their phone numbers and say, look, I'm just only for me. Just I can't knock on doors every weekend to reach out to you to share information. If you need to give me that stuff, it'll make it a lot easier for me. Okay? All right.
What?
Probably get a hold of Rolando or Gail and get a list of convention delegates. And you can get it by precinct from the SD office.
Okay, well, I know I'm the only one for my precinct because nobody came.
All right. I'm going to continue. You guys can take offline, all right? Just because I think I'm running behind already. So now, see all that stuff I talked about already kind of builds up into this answering this question, right? If I can start winning my ISD elections again, start winning the ESD elections again, you build relationships that start to really matter. So next time, you know, like I said, Russell came up, Mark came up, George came up, others came out, Russell came out. Many of the folks in this room came out to help in that election, and through that process, you build relationships. So when they ask for help, you should accommodate, and it's about service, right? Serve them, help them feed their strategy. So same kind of thing. So my thought process here, and I've asked the question, Howard and I, maybe a few others in here have had this question, okay? How do I make a difference in this one, right? You got to know, well, which races matter, right? There's, as an example, Tom Alderson probably doesn't have to put a single sign out. Probably doesn't have to. He will win. All right, I don't have to probably knock on a single door. He will win. That is such a strong Republican area. House District 130, he's not going to lose. Now, I'm not going to say give up like Ted Cruz did, right? He's got to do something, right? But my point is that all the precinct chairs up here, if we really want to turn this county red again, where do all these Republican areas need to do? Where do they go?
HD 135, Mike Maddox.
It's all these areas here, guys, right? And now to Russell's point, maybe we can't go after Sheila Jackson Lee quite yet. Maybe we can. That's arguable, it's debatable, right? But maybe it is Mike May's district right here, right? So you got to find. And Cindy or the party has data on knowing the races that are so strong Republican, there's no chance of losing, right? All the way from state level races to, really, I guess it's mostly county races, the data, and then races within the county. And then you got some that are so far gone, right? Al Green, maybe, Sheila Jackson, maybe. I'm not here to debate on the races, but my point is, you segment out the ones that really be the ones in the middle. Those are the ones you got to figure out which ones can win. And certainly Mike May's one of those. I think Kay Smith is one of those, right? And then find out who the chairs are in those districts and see how can you
Help them out.
how can you serve them, right? So anyway,
What did that map tell us? Which ones were Republican areas?
Yeah.
What did that
You
map
break it
tell
down.
us?
Yeah, so my maps, when I put these together, exactly what I do. This map that Russell puts together, Russ along, right? And really what this is showing is where you have precinct chairs is the green, the light green, the gray are no precincts, no precinct chairs, which is almost analogous to where the D's and the R's are. It's not, I've asked for that map based on Republican strength. It's, as you might guess, when you got 1,000 precincts, you're doing one at a time. It's not easy, so someone's got to automate that, and I don't have time for it. But great question. Lessons learned, and I'm done here, Gail. Sorry, I mentioned this already. You've got this, 101, best practice. Day one as a precinct chair, and the assignment that we give you, your 6-month plan. That first plan is here's the 10 closest precinct chairs to where your precinct is. Call them, meet them, try to figure out if they're worth anything. Can they help you? Can you learn from them? Will they engage? Will they serve you? Right? Next one is, I mentioned this, you got to know your own precinct. You got to get a hold of that data, right? Have an analysis on that data, and work to think what is the best strategy that I need. research, so all these other elections, and this is not easy. This is not easy. It's not like you go to one website out and they're fine. I wouldn't even known about the ESD9 election, and I'm pretty active. If it weren't for a precinct chair in Cy-Fair that's worked for 30 years with the volunteer fire department, if it weren't for him, wouldn't have been on my radar. Okay, but participating in that again helps build relationships and to do the research. And each election is different. I mentioned before. Some are at large, some are positions, some are plurality, some are one race, all candidates, and the top 2 or 3 vote getters win. No primary. I mean, all this kind of stuff you need to know. And then you got to do the research on the last couple elections and see how many votes did the winner get? How many votes total turnout? Can you, this is really one you want to weigh in. And again, I think these smaller ones are a lot, I don't want to say a lot easier, even in blue areas. If you only get 4% turnout, right? Let's say you're in an area and you've got, let's say, 70% D's and 30% R's. We only have 4% turnout. If you can get more of that R turnout, and the D's aren't getting much turnout, you can win those elections. Okay? So yeah, I'm really nervous about the next cycle because we're on the radar now, I assure you, and outside money's coming.
Yeah.
So the next one's not going to be as easy. Let's see here. Know your district boundaries. This is not easy. Unfortunately, I've asked the party, we got to make this simple. This would be stupid simple. I should know all the precinct chairs in my mud district. I should know all the precinct chairs in my ISD. I should know all the precinct chairs easily in my ESD. It should not take me 3 or 4 days to figure that out. Okay, it's a shame. We can't win elections if we can't tell who the precincts are in the darn race. Okay, so but you're going to have to do this until they make it easier. It'll take some time, and then you're going to see who's willing to get engaged. Who has their heart willing to invest into this election? Helping others, making the best strategy for an election. Again, this goes back to knowing where you are in that election cycle. Because in some cases, you're building your foundation. In my case, I need to go others and help them build their foundation. Okay? And believe me, even though I got some precinct chairs around me, they need help to, again, build their foundation. If you're talking about an election, right, you got to agree on the strategy. What I did find in some cases, people would come up and help us inside fair, and then I wouldn't see them again because they wanted to focus on their precinct. And I get that, right? I'm a precinct chair. I want my precinct chair to represent and start to get better, right? And that's okay. You need to do that, but that might not win that election, right? You may get better turnout in yours, but if you get 3 people on the street of 10 to turn out when you could have 7 out of 10 turn out in another precinct, there's a difference. So you just, again, you got to kind of work as a group. Communication, metrics. This is one thing I found pretty good too, is that once you have your strategy, try to keep your metrics simple to calculate, but communicate often. You're showing progress. Nothing more disheartening to a volunteer, right, to understand they're investing their time. They have no idea if their investment of time is helping. You need to do that. You need to communicate with folks. So we would say, in ESD election, each single week, we tally the number of doors and number of voters impacted by doors. So up front, we set a goal. I think it was 5,000 doors. That's about 17,000 people. The turnout in the ESD election was less than 1,800. See what I'm saying? So if we can knock on 5,000 doors, we got a good chance to win this election. And that's the time frame that we had. We felt we could get it done. So just communicating that as we go out. My last one is patience. Yeah, building relationships. Like this goes back to my first question that I kicked off. Right, this county did not turn blue overnight. It's not going to turn red overnight. But you got to, start again. It's all about if you think through that service mentality. I think we can go a long way. I think I'm over. I know I'm over.
You're right on 40 minutes. You're
Questions?
39 minutes, 22 seconds.
Wow, woo. I started identifying precinct chair. I've got ESD 9 and 11 done. I've got some of the MUDs done. I've got some of the school districts done, where I've got a list of all the precinct chairs for the precincts and what they're in based on, and I base that off of the primary roster, which gives you that information.
I'm sorry, I missed the front end of that.
I've got a list of all the precincts.
Yeah.
And I started with ESD 9, 11, the MUDs,
Howard, can you plug me in?
and
Oh, good. So now who's going to maintain that when the district's boundaries change? Right, and that's the problem. Right now, if you were to call Harris County Republican Party today and ask Josh is the custodian of the precinct chair list, It's the precincts from the last district. We've had 2 elections with the new precinct numbers in it. His list, don't ask me. Don't ask me. I complained about it. Says, how the hell can we win elections if we don't know what precinct the precinct chair is? Or we think he's in 111 and he's actually in 512 because the precinct numbers have changed. I don't know. We're going to sort it out. The answer was, I'm going to do that at the organization meeting. Dude, we've had 6 months of elections with the new precincts. So anyway, I don't know. Whatever. People have other activities and stuff. Other questions, Howard?
Well, the question was, what do you say at the door? And you ran off a few things, but really there's one terrific, consistent, nonpartisan comment to talk to about at the door, and that's crime. It affects every demographic, it affects whether they're Democrats or Republicans, any part of town. Hey, we just had a presentation from VanDyk. There's a great lead-in, okay? I heard Crime Stoppers. I saw Channel 11's report on crime. You're not offending anybody by their party or their demographic or anything else. It's a great lead-in. By the response, you can tell whether you have a chance or not. But crime is the first thing. There are other important subjects, but you set the hook with crime. And that leads right into defeat the judges, elect Cagle, elect Alexandra. It's a great icebreaker, conversation starter, and hook to get in the front door.
No question in there. Other questions? Appreciate the feedback though. Other questions?
Okay, so your whole point was to help other precinct chairs and find out who the precinct chairs are, but there's really no concrete action item in order to do that right now, correct?
No, it said you want to know your precinct chairs, but you got to know your precinct pretty well, right? And so the strategy.
You get to know the other precinct chairs around you.
Yeah.
But there's no really way to do that right now.
There is. It's a bit hard. You can't. I mean, you can get that list. There are new maps. Tom's done the exchange of difference. What I've added, it should be so simple where you put your address in, it brings up a map, here's your precinct, and here's the neighboring precincts, and a red dot says it's vacant, a green dot has a precinct chair, you click on the dot, you get their content. It should be stupid simple, but it's not. So, the way that I do it now, you got a spreadsheet. I use Tom's because he's taken the time, done the translation. I'm not sure it's current with all the new precinct chairs.
It is.
Based on the elections. Your new one. See, Tom's got it on his hard drive. None of you have it. So that's the issue. So you get the spreadsheet. That's one thing. The second thing, there is a new PDF that's searchable by precinct number. So once you see someone's precinct, you go search for 1, 2, 3, 4. You see it. Oh, that's mine. Then I say, okay. Then you see the numbers. Then you got to go to your spreadsheet. So it's a little clunky, especially when you're looking up 200 of them, because you've got 200, 160, 200 in a district on a race that you're trying to win.
Well, Lisa's a new precinct chair.
Yep.
And she said, she's my precinct chair, but she said that there's quite a bit of updated information on Harris votes.
Precinct chairs? Contact stuff? I'd be surprised.
751. Well, I mean,
So you go to Harris Votes, you can see your personal stuff.
I think there's a lot of information on Harris Votes.
There is.
I have mine.
But I'm not sure you go to Texas Secretary of State by county and you can see the R and the Ds, there's no contact stuff. And I find there's a lag, that's at least a 3-month lag because of when someone gets approved by vacancy versus when they're sworn in. Again, that list gets updated when the Secretary of the county submits that list to the state. So again, there's a lag in timing. I've never seen anything on Harris Votes for your precinct chair. Ours are Ds.
On Harris Votes, they have the jurisdictional maps.
Are they
That
updated?
has
Yes.
finally been updated. I think.
Some of those maps are good, but the same thing. You can look up a map, right? But you don't know the person on that precinct. Now you gotta match it to a spreadsheet.
Russ has been sending those lists within the districts, the Senate districts.
Yes.
So I do have, say, access to.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, so if you know the connection, know who to reach out to, you can kind of get it, but it's not democratized.
No.
It shouldn't be rocket science. Any precinct chair, any time on the race, know how we can quickly get a list of the chairs in the precinct. Versus, I think I called Russ Long, or maybe I look at Harris Votes, or maybe I got to call Tom because he's got it on his hard drive. I mean, come on.
Right.
How can you win elections?
Right.
Right? Other questions? We good? You're good, Gail?
So
work to.
Cindy aware of this and she's working on it?
Some folks down there are, I'm not sure, I mean, I don't bug Cindy with all these kinds of things, but some folks down there are aware, and they're trying.
Let's give Bill a big hand. We can spend the rest of the evening asking any questions. I know you got a little bit more to cover. Appreciate that. So, next we've got two candidates. I know there's three listed on there, but unfortunately, Mary's not going to be able to be with us this evening. But Lacey Cravens and Bob Simchek are candidates for the SD 17 chair. I'm going to call on Alicia to come forward first and share with you her information.
Thank you.
Got 5 minutes, and I'll give you a 1 minute sign, and then
Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like I should stand on a chair. It's sort of tradition now.
You
do it.
You got to be on this side.
Oh, we need
You're
to
good.
be able to- Sorry. And of course, the podium I can actually see over this time. Goodness gracious. So, this is things I have done. That'll be up there for a minute. You said you had a clicker for me? Right. So, this is just telling you I've been around a while. Felicia Cravens, I've lived in this neighborhood since 2003. Have been part of Senate District 17 since 2004, when they drafted me to do secretary, first convention that I attended with them. And I have had a lot of stuff that I have done since then. But I don't really want to talk about that for me. I want to talk about the district that I'm running for, chair for. The position is the chair of the precincts in Harris County in the Harris County portion of Senate District 7. But Senate District 7 covers 17, sorry, didn't mean to overstep. 17 has 8 counties, 5 congressional districts. There's a whole lot going on here. When I looked through the data, there are about 87 precincts, only 80 have any voters in them. Of those, we have about 80% Republican advantage from this primary. That's the best data we can give because we all got shuffled and everybody has a different looking precinct than they did last fall. So we don't even have any good data to go forward except for the primaries we just did, the primaries and the runoff. We stretch all the way from 610 almost into River Oaks, all the way out here to the Waller and Fort Bend County lines, picking up pockets in the villages, picking up pockets in the area around Memorial and Dairy Ashford, and then a whole big chunk of Katy, Hockley area. There are almost 250,000 voters, and registered voters at least, and we ended up with a 10% turnout, roughly, for Republicans for our primary. That put the Democrats a little bit to shame. We did much better. And some of the precincts that we have in this district are 5 or 6 to 1 advantage Republican turnout for this primary. We're motivated, the other guys are not. Harris is going to be the key to, or Harris 17 is going to be the key to helping flip the whole county red, because we got some districts that people are motivated and interested. And I tell you, I bet Alex had a whole bunch to do with dragging 10% of us out for primaries. That's really amazing.
Is that a high turnout? You consider that a high turnout?
For us, in a primary, in a year that's not presidential, it's good. It's really good. There are 3 issues we've been talking about back and forth that really motivate people that we can reach out to them with and use, and that's what I want to be in a position to do, to talk about. We need to talk about the economy, fuel prices, inflation. People resonate with that all the time. You can start a conversation with gas prices with anybody. We also, as Howard had mentioned, need to talk about crime and have some good statistics at our fingertips for dealing with that with people. And also, as we've had Bill talk about education, when we're talking about these districts up there and the things that we've seen them get away with, people respond to that when it's about their kids especially. So how are we going to do that in 17? My idea is, first we're going to rebuild the leadership that was drawn out in the last redistricting. We have been gutted in terms of some of our most powerful precincts of people, volunteers. We've got to rebuild that. We're also going to educate so more people participate, because a lot of people don't feel as though they understand a process, and when they don't, they just will not participate in it. Then also coordinate with those other 7 counties, make sure 17 stays nice and cohesive so that we can affect change not just here but all across the district. And then leverage these red precincts. Where we have 6-to-1 voter advantage over this primary, we need to make sure we're taking advantage of that. So Harris can be red, we can make that happen. I want to be a part of that. Every voter that we send out from here is another voter in another area that they don't have to go digging up and excavating. I can no longer outsource my liberty to other people. If I'm asking other people, chairs, voters, to do things they've never done before, I have to do that too. And that's why I'm running. We have to do what we've never done before, and that's what I'm gonna do in 17. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Next, we have Bob Sobachek.
Thanks, Gail. Good job, Felicia.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Now I don't have to have part of mine. At least I don't have to tell everybody about what the district's like. Well, good evening. How are you out there on this hot evening? Gail asked me to talk about the upcoming election for SD, and tonight I would like to go over a couple of things that more or less have to do with applying for a job. I'm going to approach it that way. I'm applying for a job to be the chairman of SD 17. If you wanted to hire somebody for this job, you would probably start with making a list of the requirements that you need, like experience with large groups, knowledge of the market, in this case, the political dynamics. And of course, we had a great presentation earlier. Then of course, you have to have a plan or a vision. And I think Felicia and I both realize that that has been a big, big lack of what's happened before without a vision. In the experience category, having a person that has led, in my case, hundreds of sailors, lead large charitable groups that fed thousands of displaced hurricane victims, and of course, I was at one time the SD chair for SD 17. Knowledge of the market, someone who has worked with many of the candidates and congressional candidates, councilmen, and judicial candidates. I've worked on the campaigns of almost every one of those, and we, except with the judicial candidates last time, we did pretty good. The judicial, we got plastered on that last one, and that's why we lost some of them, and that's why you have so much crime today. You've got judges, district court judges, that have never even set foot in a courtroom deciding on very, very important things. So, let's see. There it is. Personal knowledge of the database. Well, I've been working with Russ Long and his database because I needed to, because I'm on the vacancy committee. And we have been adding lots of new precinct chairs. It's not an easy job. We have to go out and recruit. I've been recruiting people in SD 17. Somebody earlier said, well, I recruited 3. I don't know how many I've recruited, but I know it's a bunch. That's something that has been lacking. Personal knowledge of the customer database. I know I say this every now and then, well, especially with Howard. He's saying my name backwards. I kind of do that on purpose, because I want people to remember me, and I want them to know that I'm accessible and I can be approachable. And I think that's what you need when you're trying to get a cohesiveness with the precinct chairs. Now, my vision with SD 17 is that we have 2 vice chairs that will help, because it is spread out. And there's not one person can't go and meet with all the precinct chairs. No matter how hard you try, I have tried it. So what you need to do is you need to have a layer of responsibility for different people to go out and help do the training. And we've got excellent training. But a lot of them, after they get to the training, they need follow-up. And that's what these vice chairs would be doing. We need help to create small grassroots groups. Now, I've helped start at least 4 of them in the west part of town. And they've been very successful at getting the message out and getting the candidates in forums and things. We need to have somebody who can also have a Hispanic leader, a Vietnamese leader, a leader for the blacks. We need different people in the SD that actually will help with that, and that's my vision. So, if that's what you want, to have a leader that has that kind of vision, to really get the votes out and try to conquer some of these questionable precincts, I'm Bob Suichek, and I would like to have your vote.
So I was shocked. I wanted to vote for the ESD in my area. That's ESD is number 48. And I couldn't find anything about where the election was going to be held. And finally, I traced down some of the people involved with it, and they were kind enough to tell me that the election had been canceled because there was no one that had an interest in becoming a commissioner for ESD 48. They didn't advertise it, but I didn't know it was open. So I was shocked. But fortunately, I ran into, it was a business networking meeting where I met Simon. He was actually giving a presentation to the group. And so I got with him afterwards and started picking his brain and found out that there was so much about MUDs and ESDs and EMSs that I didn't know. So I asked Simon if he would come, and you may be in the same situation. I know Charlie Waldy told me that he certainly was. And so if you mind for a few minutes to have Simon explain things to Simon, you're off and running.
Oh, you're still, you're not off and running. You got to take that one loose, and you've got HDMI in already? Yeah.
Howard is trained.
That's probably to tell Howard we didn't need to screw that in. Now.
There you go.
There we go. Well, I am OCD, so I'm gonna take a second and make sure that this is straight, because if I was out there, I wouldn't be able to look at the screen sideways. That's good. You guys like that?
Yeah.
All right. So, man, Gail, thank you, I appreciate it. It's a funny thing, I know a number of faces. Felicia, actually, I met in this district way back when. I was a member of that very first KDP party. And this facility was actually one of the very first places that ever did a fire education seminar for this community. So my background before I get into that and how some of you guys know me is my role with ESD 48, which is Harris County Emergency Service District 48, Fire and EMS. But prior to ESD 48 being ESD 48, we used to be a volunteer department called West I-10 VFD. West I-10 was contracted to provide fire service and EMS service for someone, we have invisible people coming in now, for ESD 48. So I was thrust into a very interesting situation, being a volunteer firefighter, with the goal of helping the department to do community risk reduction and make the community safer. We were here because we did a smoke alarm blitz and went house to house replacing smoke alarms for free. It was a blast. I love this community. But when we had this turnover, the VFD kind of tried to go to war with the ESD and claimed that all the fire stations and fire trucks were theirs and that we could use them. It was a crazy situation. I became the spokesperson for the fire department. And one of the things I did in doing that was I got to know all my local MUDs. I went to my ISD. I got to know all the HOAs that would hear me and just try to help them understand what is an ESD and how it worked. And so part of that was getting to know my MUDs, and there were 37 MUDs within my district. I had no clue that there were 37 MUDs just in the Harris County portion of ESD 48. If you don't know, in the Katy ISD school boundaries, there's over 130. And I'll show you some things. So I became an expert really quick on how elections worked with these small special purpose districts. And eventually I ended up being asked by more and more districts, once I kind of helped ESD 48, they said, hey, will you come help me on the side? Will you do this? Will you help us understand that? And as every good firefighter has, I have multiple jobs on the side. I began doing that with a little company I started with 3 other people called Touchstone District Services, and we became kind of those go-tos for those kind of things. So this was a presentation I did for a district, so I'm just going through this so you know the name. The meat here is in 2 slides. But Touchstone, we chose that because we wanted to be the standard by which everything got judged. You know, the touchstone was a stone, a black stone that you would take, and you would take a known piece of gold, and you would mark that stone, and if somebody was giving you a piece of gold and you want to know if it was authentic, you would mark that next to it. You could determine whether it was legitimate or real. And so in everything we did, we were like, you know, this is really what we want to do. We want to help districts better communicate with their public, because ESD 9, great fire department, puts out fires really, really well, but there's a lot of places where they fall short. And they were my neighbor to the north. So ESD 48 goes up to Clay Road. North of Clay Road is ESD 9. Love those guys. Things have changed over the years. And so there's some interesting stuff going on. I'm not going to get into the politics specifically of 9. I do not work for them or work with them, but I have viewed them from afar. In this Katy area, do you guys know how many fire departments, not stations, how many fire departments have to serve the Katy area? Gail might know because he's heard my presentation. So if you look at the cities, you've got the city of Katy that serves about 10 to 15,000 of the 400,000 Cadians. You have the very eastern portion, Barker Cypress, right by the Barker and Addicts, served by HFD. So a tiny bit of HFD serves the very far east. The other 360,000 are covered by 8 different ESDs. Most people have no clue. So on this side of the Harris County, we've got ESD 48, we've got ESD 47, which is Westlake, just a little bit west, Fry Road. And then you've got north, you've got Sag Fair, you've got ESD, Fort Bend ESD 2, Fire Department. You've got Community Fire Department, Harris Fort Bend 100, a whole bunch of these things. So these are some of the things, yeah.
Can ESD boundary outside the county, multiple counties?
Yes, Harris, yes, Harris Fort Bend 100 is an example of that. They go over both. Also Waller Harris 200. Basically abuts 9, takes a portion of Harris and all of Waller County. There's special rules for districts that cross over counties, one of those being election rules. But then these are your MUDs, and this is as of a year or 2 ago. These are the MUDs just within the Houston region, over 900 MUDs within the Houston region. I sit on a MUD. I'm a MUD director myself, and I sit on Willow Point MUD. We've got about 600-700 homes, and we got 2 neighborhoods, myself and 1 other resident. We still have 3 appointees on our board. But there are tons of these, and there's probably 70 or 80 additional after that. So most of you guys probably know what a MUD is, since Bill was already kind of going through it, but provide water, sewer, drainage. They can also do a few other things. For instance, my first client when I opened Touchstone was Fort Bend 151, or Firethorn. Most people know them as Firethorn, but it's Fort Bend MUD 151. They actually have firepower. So if you drive down 1463 and you see that Station 3 that Katy mans right now, that's not actually the fire department. That is the MUD. The MUD owns that station, owns the fire truck. Katy just provides the men and women who serve on that truck. So there are some unique things that some MUDs have the ability to do in some areas, but their main goal is under the Constitution is provide water, sewer, and drainage. You also have the levee improvement districts in Fort Bend County. You've got, especially around the Brazos, but they're common across the state. Their total goal is just to keep areas dry. They don't really do anything except build hills, right? And so those levees are there to keep people safe and to allow for communities to be developed. One of my first clients there was Fort Bend Lid 7. It's the New Territory community. But New Territory literally could not be built there if it wasn't for the levee, right? And many of these levees had to evacuate during Harvey, but many of them didn't have any good way to communicate with the residents because most of them don't have websites. much like the MUDs, and many of them don't have any communication platform, which is a passion of mine to change. Emergency service districts, you can't even see the Houston ones because there's so many of them, and we already mentioned some overlap. ESD 11 is an EMS only, that was being mentioned earlier. Used to be Cypress Creek EMS was the contract, now ESD 11 provides direct service. You got ESD 9, you got 48, all of them down here. And then man, up in the Cypress region, you got Klein, is Harris County 16. You've got Spring Fire, which is ESD 7. People always wonder, how the heck do you keep them all straight? I don't know, but it works in my head. In Fort Bend, you have a little bit simpler. They're much larger. So Fulshear-Simonton is ESD 4. Westlake, sorry, not Westlake, that's 47. Willow Fork Fire Department, that covers the Cinco Ranch area. That's my department. That's the purple one there. That little purple dot at the tippy top, that's where my mud is. So literally, they travel through Katie's territory to respond to me. Station 3 had a fire, they'll probably make it to my house first if there's a fire. But you have, again, other ESDs around Fort Bend, and the same is true within Montgomery and other counties as well. Most ESDs in our area provide fire. They can provide both. Some only do EMS. So as an example, my home here, ESD 48, is both fire and EMS, and they do both. On the Fort Bend side, Fort Bend County EMS provides EMS for most of the county. And so generally your ESDs on the Fort Bend side are only going to be a fire-based ESD because the county provides that service. Now, getting to some specifics. A lot of people don't even know what MUD district, you guys are probably more savvy than most. How many of you guys know what MUD district you live in? Okay, about half. I thought maybe you would raise that bar. So most people don't know. And so one opportunity, as a MUD director myself, my MUD is part of the Association of Water Board Directors, AWBD, that's our association of all the MUDs. They have on the website something I help them get, a tool now, Find My District. So you can literally go in there and search. If you know the name, you can search for it, or you can put your address in, and it will pull up what MUD district that you live in. And so we added that feature as an association a while back to help people because folks always kept asking and didn't know.
Can we use that to find my precinct chair?
Yeah. It's not a hard tool. I wondered when you said that. And so, hey, I helped with a sales tax election for an ESD, Harris County ESD 13, Cypress Creek Fire, not to be confused with Cypress Creek EMS 11. I did that back in 2019, and one of the things we did was we reached out to both the Democrat and the Republican precinct chairs and brought them in, had them sit down with the chief, explain kind of what we were going through, why we were doing it. And it was great because one, they're like, the fire department's never done this before. And it was really funny. It was actually much easier at that time to find the Republicans because the Republican precinct chairs, at least in that section of Cypress, had numbers and or emails. And I was able to reach most of them. The Democrats, I couldn't find them. Now, granted, it's hard bar over there, so that's probably why.
So is this just MUD, it's not ESD?
This is just MUDs, yes, correct. ESDs don't have a tool like this yet. I'm working. I'm also a member of the association. It's called Safety, but the ESD version of this, they do not have the tool yet, but I'm trying to get them to add that by next year. Again, I believe everyone should know who they pay taxes to. So here's an example. This is Harris County Appraisal District, HCAD. If you guys have ever been on HCAD, one of the simplest things to do, I put in this address as in, so I'm not pulling up any of your guys' homes and giving away your home values, but all this is public data. And so if you zoom in down here, these are all the districts that this address pays taxes to. So obviously KDISD, $1.35 is the top there. You've got Harris County Flood Control, Port of Houston, hospital districts, education department, which I think is crazy, we're paying twice. Harris County MUD 81, which is the MUD that we sit in here. I know a number of those MUD directors. And then ESD 48 is the ESD. A lot of people have no clue. There's one place you can go to find out who all you're paying the taxes to. And then if you don't know who those folks are, go find them. Big thing for me, you should be able to Google them. If you pay taxes to them, you should be able to Google them. And unfortunately, in the MUD world, and I say this knowing that some of the attorney firms would be mad at me for saying this, currently, because there is no mandate for MUDs, ESDs are required to have websites and maintain them. MUDs are not yet. There's verbiage and language that allow them to get away with, and I say that loosely, as long as they post data or cause to be posted, so if they have a third party post information about that MUD that's searchable, they're meeting the requirement of posting certain data. They don't have to have their own. And there's some reasons for and against it. I will tell you, The legislature has made it very hard for mud districts to have a website. There's a whole bunch of hoops that I don't think you should have to jump through to do it, that are required. As an example, do you care how much energy, electricity, your local pump moves, that moves the blower? Do you care how much power is consumed in a year?
No.
I don't. I hope they're doing a good job, not paying high prices, but you know what, if you have a website, the MUD now has to calculate that every year and cause it to be posted on the internet.
As if anybody knows what it means.
They don't, but in the legislature's brilliance, if you have a website, you now have to tally, total, and cause that to be produced and put on the site. If you don't have a website, the public doesn't have to know. So there are weird things that cause some districts not to hide, but just not want to go through all the extra crap. Now, I still believe it's worth it and they should do it. Of course, that's a self-plug because I help districts with websites. But here's an example of one of my favorite. This is the Westheimer Lakes area, 1463 and 1093 down by West Park. They had a bond authorization. They have 2 additional neighborhoods beyond the original Westheimer Lakes that they were adding, that they needed additional bond authorization to be able to do some of the infrastructure to do it. If you just throw that onto a ballot and just hope for the best, low turnout, sometimes you get lucky. Most of the time, people are more savvy, that doesn't work anymore. So they said, hey, would you help us with an education campaign and tell people what they're even voting on? And so we did some of those kind of things. We put a few different things in place. I'll go through it quickly, but just putting an FAQ, hey, what is this all about? What is a MUD? What would you use the money for? Would this affect our taxes? All that simple stuff. And most people, when they're given that information, they can make their own informed decision. As a MUD district or as an ESD, they cannot advocate for a ballot measure or for a candidate. And so they've got to be very careful with that. If they cross that line,
So
they can cross.
ESD 9 actually used the membership list to promote the incumbent candidates.
And yeah,
We had to do the open records request on it.
and that's the
We
kind
had
of thing.
an existing member actually shared that with us, and volunteer list. It's a law.
It-
I'm not sure it's a felony or not.
Well, no, but it is a violation of Texas Ethics Commission,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be done.
Right.
That's why when ESDs and other things, if they, we don't do anything with candidates, my team, but if they have something they're gonna put on the ballot and bring to the voters, I come in because I've navigated that so many times that even some of the attorneys defer to me and my team on what they can and can't do, because it's very specific, and it is a violation of the Texas Ethics Commission if you cross those lines.
So you're saying MUDs don't have to be contiguous?
They absolutely don't. Nope. I know one that has 4 or 5 non-contiguous. The only difference is obviously to be annexed in, they have to have either 50% of property owners within that area vote for it. If it's a developer that owns the whole land, he can say I'm in. And then the city of Houston or whatever ETJ that land is in has to authorize it as well. So if it's Houston or if it's Katy, if it's Sugar Land, Rosenberg, that's how that works. Yeah. So educational videos, all these kind of things, I believe districts should do a better job of. But I would love to be a resource. I obviously work in this field. My passion is these special purpose districts, in my opinion, do a great job for our community. Our homes would be $30,000 to $50,000 to $80,000 more apiece if we did not have MUDs. MUDs are the most grassroots form of government that Texas has ever come up with. Literally 670 homes. I'm responsible for those 670 homes. I've got about 1,100 registered voters in my district, and they all know where I live. And they know I'm the guy. And so they have problems. Some of them, they knock on my door. But anyways, if you have questions about MUDs or ESDs, I would love to help. This is my company number, because I didn't change it. I'll give you my card. I'll leave it with my cell phone on it. I would love to help, but I'm getting the hook from Mr. Ives here. So if I got a second for questions. Okay, all right, so questions, yes?
Do ESDs and MUDs only exist in unincorporated areas of the county?
Yes, however, some of them can be city MUDs. So in other words, the idea of the MUD or the ESD, but more so the MUD, is that if a city wants to grow an area, and they've got to put in a water plant, a sewer plant, all the pipes, millions of dollars of stuff underground, that can be millions and millions of dollars on their books. So the idea of the MUD was created to allow a city to expand and okay a development without another 50 million going on their bottom line and it changing their credit rating. So the city can, in some cases, already pre-plan, hey, we're gonna form this MUD, the developer's gonna build it out, once all the debt gets paid off, we're gonna annex it in, it's gonna be part of the city, and they call that a city MUD. Sometimes they even provide the water and sewer for them, but it's off book because it's a separate governmental entity. But in most cases, yes, it's unincorporated. In fact, I'll tell you this, a good statistic. The city of Houston, 4th largest city in the nation, right? Do you know if you take the unincorporated, I wish I could go straight back to that slide, the unincorporated areas that have all those MUDs, Harris County alone, excluding all the other counties, just the unincorporated people who live in a MUD, 1.8 million people. If it was a city, unincorporated MUDs, if it was a city, it would be the 5th largest city directly behind Houston. So you have the 4th largest and the unincorporated 5th largest city all in Harris County.
I think I've heard this
Yes,
is
ma'am.
the
So
third largest
can you touch on who the boards are? How do you find out who the boards are?
Yes, great question.
When do they, how do you?
Yeah, so ESDs are a little bit different. In Harris County, ESD commissioners are elected. In all other counties, save for a few, Orange County is different, and a couple others, and county ESDs that cross over county boundaries, they have to be elected. All the others are appointed by county commissioners. And so, for instance, in Fort Bend County, all of your ESD folks are appointed. So that's why Harris County is a little bit unique. Waller Harris 200, because they're 2 counties, they have to vote for theirs as well. But for the most part, those are all elected just in Harris County. They must both reside in and be registered to vote in the district to be an ESD commissioner. Okay, it's a little bit different in MUDs. On the MUD side, you must either live in or own property within the district. And the reason they created it that way is because when a MUD is first created, it's literally dirt. Nobody lives there. The one shady thing, if anyone points and pokes at MUDs, is the way they get voters. Put a trailer on there, they get 2 people to live there for 6 months, they now become residents of the district, they vote in an election, 2 people vote and approve everything. But that's Texas Constitution, legislature made them do it. Now, once that gets formed, then they will deed a piece of dirt to 5 people, and those are the first 5 directors. The idea then is as the homes go in and people live there, then eventually homeowners, residents will take those spots over. I was the first resident on my board. It was me and 4 other appointees.
But how do you find out when the elections are?
Yes, so, and I wish I could show you, there is, the easiest way that I find on it, the elections, if they have a website, have to post when that is. If they don't have a website, they don't have to. The easiest way that I found is if you want to Google TCEQ, which is the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, it's kind of like our EPA for Texas. TCEQ space WDD, Water District Database. TCEQ space WDD. You'll get to the Water District Database. You go in there, that is TCEQ's list of every MUD, Water Control Improvement District, all the different IDs, SCUDs, UDs, PUDs, all those kind of things. You have to be it's not a smart search. You have to be very careful. Like if one is FB MUD 20 and the other is Fort Bend MUD 20, it won't show you both. You gotta type it. But when you go in there, it will have up at the top, you can click on affiliate, and in there it'll show you who the attorney is, the engineer, the operator, and who sits on the board.
Wow. So those board members live in that.
Live or own property in.
Okay.
So again, if they're residents, yes. Now one way, and this is something that, I've got a board that is a client of mine, full disclosure. They needed a website, communications, they do some great stuff for the community. They weren't telling their story, they brought me in. In talking to them, they needed someone else to help them. They had semis that kept parking in their roads, and they wanted to get signatures to get a sign up so that the police could tow them. This was bad. Literally 5, 6, 8 semis parking in the middle of the neighborhood. People didn't even live there. It was just the semi-dumping ground. So they needed to get the county's commissioner court to put a sign up so that the deputies could tow them. Well, they wanted citizen to help. I know a friend of mine who lives in that neighborhood, and I told him, like, hey, would you help him do this? And as he started going around getting signatures, kind of like you guys are trying to just rally votes, he lives in the district. Turned out 2 of the ladies who've been on that board for 40 years have been appointees the whole time. They've never lived there. Now, they're very involved. Many of them come and walk the park on a weekly basis, but they don't live there. And when they found out that Leroy did, they're like, hey, do you want to be on the board? And one of the ladies stepped down last month and put Leroy on the board.
So how long is the term?
It's a 4-year term on a rotating 2-year basis. So you have 3 up 1 year and 2 up. Most of them, not all, 90% of them are even years. So most of your boards have elections in 22. The next round will be in 24. A few of them have them off cycle, but most of them hold them in May on even years. Sorry for a long answer. Yeah, I know, you gotta move me here.
Let's get time to go.
up here in just a few minutes. And just before the meeting, I was texting and emailing back with Simon. He was at a mud meeting, I don't know, on the other side of town.
I was in New
He was item number 26 out of 27 items on the agenda, and so I wasn't concerned about Bill running over.
I apologize for my tardiness. I drove from New Caney as quick as I could.
So we always want to thank the individuals that have helped us out. I served multiple purposes this evening because two of our guys, one is in Denver and the other was in Fort Worth. They're out of town, and Charlie Walden is our videographer today. So we hope. Let's give them a hand. So I want to wrap up with some information for you. One, the important dates you know, you've got them down in your calendar. We're going to have the state, and then, of course, at November the 7th, will be our election times. I forgot who passed this on. Anyway, if you want to know the current Texas Republican Party platform, go to texasgop.org/platform. And in case you didn't know it, this is the nation's largest political gathering when we have our Texas Republican Party convention, the largest in the nation. Another event, I think Paul Novus passed his on me, but anyway, Executive Council has Daniel Flores coming, and it'll be at the Lakeside Country Club. Great place to go. It'll be on June the 14th. And the Cyfair Republican Women have Cactus Jack Cagle speaking to them on June the 23rd. How many of you every Tuesday are listening to Weekly Fire? A few of you. Everybody on this. It's got great information. Here's a couple of groups. One of them is the Katy Precinct meetup. They had their meeting last week. They only had 60 people there. West Side Conservative, and I think Cactus Jack is going to be at the next meeting. West Side Conservative Group and Dave Lampenfield. Raise your hand back there so they know. Check him out because he always has awesome meetings. We want to thank Charlie. This is your cue. We want to thank each and every one of you guys for being here, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next session.
Next
Thanks.